Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good evening, and welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. This meeting of the City Planning Commission will begin with a few introductory remarks. The City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission serves as an advisory board of the City Council. It is the responsibility of the Planning Commission to consider and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. Actions taken tonight on conditional use permits are final unless appealed to the City Council in writing in 5 days, and any actions taken tonight on initial development plans, alternative plans, or minor amendments are final. Any recommendations made on preliminary subdivision plan requests tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the third council meeting of this month, or at the first council meeting of the next month if associated with a rezoning. Any recommendations made on zoning requests, future land use amendments, or ordinance amendments tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the first council meeting of next month. Council meetings are held at 7:00 p.m. here in the Carnegie Town Hall and are televised. The Planning Commission will first approve the consent agenda and then the regular agenda. In order to place certain non-controversial items on the Commission's consent agenda, planning staff and the Planning Commission apply the following criteria. First, the request conforms with the Shape Sioux Falls 2040 Comprehensive Plan. Then the Planning Commission will discuss the matter further and take appropriate action. We ask that anyone addressing the Planning Commission move to the podium microphone and identify themselves for the record. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, we ask that you please either turn off or silence your electronic devices. This meeting is being televised on CityLink and will be rebroadcast Saturday at 10 a.m. and Wednesday at 1 a.m. Thank you for your cooperation. Good evening and welcome to Carnegie Town Hall. I call this meeting of the Sioux Falls Planning Commission to order. I would like to emphasize a couple of items out of courtesy for everyone. Please silence all electronic devices. We look forward to hearing everyone's testimony tonight and appreciate you joining us. In an effort to have sufficient time to hear from audience members, we ask that when you come to the podium, please state your name and address for the record, and make sure you step all the way up to the microphones. Please limit your comments to 5. You will notice there is a timer in front of you for that 5 minutes. The first 4.5 minutes will be a green light, then it'll turn yellow for the last 30 seconds, and then it'll turn red when your time is up. So please respect that. That's what keeps us on schedule so everybody has a chance to address the commission. At this time, we will consider the consent agenda. Denise, please read the items on the consent agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item 1, approval of minutes. 1A is Planning Commission briefing of Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. Item 1B is Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. Item 2A, petition rezone 013329-2020, rezoning from the AG Agriculture District to the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District and RS Single Family Residential Suburban District, districts located west of Ritchie Drive and south of West Brook Drive. Item 2B, Petition is a rezone 013340-2020, rezoning from the C2 neighborhood commercial LW Live Work and O office districts to the I1 light industrial LW Live Work C2 neighborhood commercial districts located at North Career Avenue and Frank Boyce Drive. Item 2C, petition rezone 013392-2020, rezoning from the AG Agriculture District to the C2 Neighborhood Commercial District located at 5001 South Sycamore Avenue. Item 2D, petition conditional use 013338-2020, conditional use permit to allow a full-service restaurant located at 114 North Indiana Avenue. Item 2E, petition conditional use 013390-2020, conditional use permit for a full-service restaurant located at 1501 East 69th Street. Item 2F, petition conditional use 013400-2020, conditional use permit for on-sale alcohol located at 1212 East 10th Street. Item 2G, petition alternative site plan 013369-2020, alternative site plan for parking plan located at 4400 West 69th Street. Item 3, consent agenda approval.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any objections from the audience who would like to see any of these items pulled to the regular agenda? Anybody want to speak to one of these items?
Yeah, we received a letter in opposition of item 2E, so we'd like that one pulled to the regular agenda, please.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other items on the consent agenda the audience wishes to move to the regular agenda for additional discussion? Okay, seeing none, I'd entertain a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chair, would you like a formal motion to remove 2E, or is the request enough?
Let's do that as an amendment after we make the primary motion.
I will move to approve the consent agenda for discussion purposes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move to remove item 2E as in elephant from the consent agenda.
Second.
It's moved and seconded to move item 2E to the regular agenda. Any discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, all those in favor of the amendment signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we have the primary motion of the consent agenda with item 2E now removed. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 All those opposed, no. Motion carries. If your item was on the consent, except for item 2E, you're free to leave if you'd like. Now we'll move on to the entertain a motion for the regular agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for the regular agenda approval. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 2E, Denise.
Item 2E is a petition, conditional use 013390-2020, conditional use permit for a full-service restaurant located at 1501 East 69th Street.
Good evening, Jason Bieber representing Planning and Development Services. This is an application by Rob Kurtenbach. The owner is Michael Rogers. It's located at 69th and Cliff, just north of the USF Stadium. The applicant is proposing to open a new full-service restaurant within an existing tenant space. The predominant use will be a full-service restaurant, but they will have some video lottery terminals. As we know, East 69th Street is classified as a minor arterial and does contain a number of commercial office and institutional and multifamily land uses. The proposed full-service restaurant meets the criteria of the comprehensive plan, and the applicant meets the conditional use permit standards to allow this full-service restaurant. Because the applicant's proposed project meets the spirit and intent of the comprehensive plan, staff does recommend approval of this application, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
offer, and I imagine, I don't know the exact distance away, but I'm sure it's quite a ways away. So I kind of had to look around at other places in town, and I would imagine we've got full-service restaurants with similar distance from Roosevelt or probably some of the other high schools in town. So I had a little bit less concern after looking at how large that distance was, so.
Okay, sounds good. Other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of this signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you.
Item 5A is petition rezone 013281-2020, rezoning from the O Office District to the LW Live Work District located at 1401 South Ellis Road.
Evening Commission, Albert Schmidt, City of Sioux Falls Planning Office. This location is in the southwest quadrant of the city and at the southwest corner of 22nd and Ellis. The applicant owner here is Nelson Development, Kelly Nelson. And the area of this is approximately 3.9 acres in size. The request is to rezone the property from O Office to LW Live Work. The applicant is proposing to construct 2 apartment buildings with a total of 80 units, a 3-story along the east and a 2-story along the middle of the property. The original preliminary subdivision plan for this area was approved in April of 2019. The applicant provided an original concept plan when they submitted their rezoning petition that shows 3 3-story buildings with a total of 124 apartment units. Sorry, there's that one. And the applicant held a neighborhood meeting at our request on site on November 18th, 2020 at 5 p.m. to talk with the approximately 25 or so neighbors about the project on site. At that time, the concept plan showed around 100 units on 2 3-story buildings on the site. The concerns raised at the meeting were traffic onto the local and collector streets, needing traffic lights at 22nd and Ellis, where the apartment driveways were located against neighboring properties, having a 3-story building next to a single-family house, snow removal process and parking, long-term ownership of property, water drainage concerns, and the effect on neighborhood property values. Significant concerns were felt within this group than others who have contacted the planning office. And since that meeting, over 20 neighborhood communications have been received, and anything received before yesterday has been posted online. And all those that kind of came between yesterday and today's meeting here today, around 4:45, have been printed off and provided here on site. And staff reviewed some of those comments, and when our comments were reviewed internally through other departments, we found that with the access concerns, access points will need to match existing accesses to the north. And so access on Mary Beth is acceptable to our traffic side of things, but with neighborhood concerns, we've opted to try to get the applicant to direct traffic on to 22nd to stay off of Mary Beth. And for fire, they reviewed it real quick, and their initial look at it said that because the building had fire suppression systems, the fire code has no issues with the concept that's shown currently, as they can kind of have up to 300 feet from those areas with that. Drainage looked at it, and it appears that this area is within an existing regional BMP to the south there. As long as there's no change in the drainage pattern, meaning they don't shed stuff to the north, it all goes to the south, that should be able to pull most of that in. However, it should note that there might be some minor detention that still may be done on site depending on the final design. That will be determined when the building plans are submitted and reviewed. And then sewer capacity was reviewed, and they indicated the capacity is available for all 80 units at this site. The neighborhood had those communications to us, about, like I said, over 20 or so, and so we were able to get a good sense of the exact kind of concerns going on there, so we greatly appreciated that commentary from the neighborhood. The developer has since then significantly updated their concept plan, going from the 124 units and 3 3-story buildings with access onto Mary Beth and 22nd Street down to 80 units in 1 3-story building along Ellis and 1 2-story building in the middle of the property. 1-story garages were also added to the middle and the west side of the property to help provide a step-down appearance in the building heights. The applicant is also proposing a full 30-foot setback along the entire south property line. In addition to addressing parking concerns, additional parking stalls have been added to go above the city minimum requirements. Currently, the concept plan shows a total of 149 parking spaces on site, and they estimate the required parking spaces would be around 120 based on what they're dividing up between singles, twos, and bedroom units. This would make an average of about 1.86 parking spaces for each unit available. The applicant is applying to construct apartment buildings consisting of no more than 48 units per building. The applicant has indicated they are looking to maintain at least a 30-foot distance between the southern edge of any apartment building and the abutting property line with the existing single-family dwellings to the south. The 30-foot distance is the minimum required by ordinance for a 3-story apartment building adjacent to single-family. Additional landscape standards will also be required, such as a level C buffer yard. With that in mind, the planning staff and commission and city council could consider additional conditions on this rezoning if they feel that that would help with neighborhood concerns, things like that. So such things that you could consider that we feel would kind of follow through with what the main concerns have been that we've heard are: 1, building further than 200 feet from Ellis Road can have a minimum height of 2 stories, 35 feet. So that'd be anything further away than that, limit down basically to 2 stories. Then 2, a minimum of a level C buffer yard would be required along the south property line. And they could also add one in there that says a maximum of 80 total residential units on site. This slide shows how the concept plan would generally fit onto the lot in comparison with the adjacent buildings. So you can kind of see how they line up a little bit there. And then the following 3 slides we have here just show some existing examples in Sioux Falls where apartments have been located at or near the intersection of collector and arterial streets. The first one is from the 57th and Sertoma area. The second one here is from the 69th and Louise Avenue area. And the third one is from the 41st and Veterans Parkway area. And the site is currently undeveloped with streets and utilities available to the site. Staff is recommending approval of this rezoning based on it being in the spirit and intent and conformance of the comprehensive plan and providing a transition from Ellis Road into the single-family neighborhood. Thank you.
Any questions for the city from the commission? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Oh, did you have one?
Question for you. So across the street, I'm guessing it's... You turn your mic on.
On the other side of Mary Beth, is that developed?
That is undeveloped and currently owned by the applicant as well. Its preliminary subdivision plan shows single-family housing going across the street, approximately 5 single-family lots, and zoned for single-family currently, and not being requested with this request to change.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you. For public testimony, we've had a request from Megan to go for personal reasons. So come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Megan Stever. Are you ready to go? All right. So I'm here because my children and I live in the neighborhood, but also because I am a civil engineer by trade. And so a lot of the questions regarding the accesses and the fire code, those came from me to the city. And I'm kind of more concerned about your process and how this is being handled in regards to public input. And I can tell you right now that that site plan right there does not meet engineering guidance from the city of Sioux Falls as far as access spacing. And it probably doesn't meet site distance requirements around that corner there where there's trees in front of the entrance. So you need a line of sight of about 200 feet, which means that when somebody is pulling out onto 22nd Street, they don't hit a child maybe coming around on the sidewalk because they can actually see them for a specified distance. But really back to what I want to address, which is the process here. So a lot of those questions came up regarding the concept plan that was submitted. But when I go to the city's website, and I have a little snapshot of your website, it gives me an application for petition for rezoning, an application for a conditional use permit. And on this website page, it doesn't state permit application for rezoning, which is a different thing according to the city, okay? So this page is specific to application for rezoning. So then when I go to the rezoning petition itself, okay. Well, I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but there's a little checkbox here. And among the items that are required with this zoning application is the site plan. And then on that same website, it describes the site plan and provides a document and guidance regarding your own process and how it's to take place. And the site plan is one of the most important aspects of a conditional use or zoning application. The site plan must be submitted along with the rezoning or a conditional use permit application. The reason to me for doing it this way and for requiring a site plan prior to the public input and actually reviewing this and making recommendations is because the whole goal is to make sure that you are basically aligning with the intent of the city's growth plan and with the spirit of the law and what that law requires, which is in rezoning, it requires cities to develop committees like this. And it also does require that you allow the public an opportunity to have input in these sessions. And in order to have any sort of meaningful input, you have to have some idea based on the specific site you're looking at, whether you have to have a minimal amount of information to be able to review and understand whether it fits within that growth plan and those goals. And when I look at the site, I can see it's 100% surrounded by low-density residential. And so it, to me, appears to be a spot zone. There's issues with the accesses. It's not clear whether they meet design standards. And so the whole point of providing this site plan is so that the developer can prove to the public and prove to you that they can actually come up with a concept that meets your ordinances and that fits within that growth plan that you've developed. And from what I can see, it doesn't. This land is on a designated wetland, 1.7 acres actually, and you can look at that up on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service website. So out of the 4 acres proposed for rezoning, 1.7 is on a wetland. Your growth plan says that we don't want to create flooding, so we want to preserve those wetland areas. The traffic and safety, that's going to be an issue, and that should be looked at. And I really think that you should disapprove this application until the developer provides a full and complete site plan as per your own website.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I have some paperwork for you guys. And I just put this together in like maybe 2 hours. I didn't really spend any time on it, but it's got all that information.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this item? Come forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
In South Dakota for 34 years. I was with the city dealing with attorney's office. And I have just recently been brought on board as to this issue and wanted to appear tonight to make sure you know that, as I understand, I represent a significant group of folks who oppose this. As I understand, as of late this afternoon, there's some 90 petitioners that oppose this particular rezone. From my experience with the city, I can tell you that just in looking at this from the proverbial 1,000 feet, I see lots of problems. Probably first and foremost, I hear the planning staff tonight say this is a rezoning petition for 3.9 acres. The rezoning petition, however, says it's 4.15 acres. As I understand, and again, I'm recently on board with this, and I'm a 30-year East Sider, but as I understand, there has not been sufficient notice to all of the property owners. There are apparently at least 2 businesses that were not provided notice. I am well familiar with, change of zoning ordinances, and under 160, 652, the review criteria, but probably most importantly for tonight at least, 160.653 sub A for signage A, B, and C, and also sub 2 haven't been complied with. I have seen, and what I'm referencing is that I see that there's an original rezoning petition. There likely could have been signage as to that, but then there have been significant changes, as I understand, and I've seen the notice for that went out from planning, I believe, on November 25th. That's not 10 days. And I'm certainly familiar with that as to notice, it doesn't have to be precise notice, but it has to be substantial compliance. There isn't substantial compliance here. And at a minimum, with the problems that you have with the lack of notice, the change sort of midstream, this significant group of people, as they're putting together these petitions, at a minimum, there needs to be a deferral. They brought me on board potentially to look at litigation. I'm not here to threaten that, but I'm here to say you have concerns here in the neighborhood, and if you're going to do this, you got to do it right. It isn't sufficient to say, well, it's good enough for government work. There was original notice, but there was no notice as to the changes, and well, we tried to get everybody, but we missed some folks. That's not enough. And this screams for a deferral in front of this body, and let these folks, get together, know exactly what's being talked about. I appreciate the woman that just spoke. I think she brings up very good points, that there are significant questions that still exist here and that haven't been addressed. And honestly, if I understood your policy, and it's been a long time since I sat in on a planning commission meeting through the city attorney's office, but I don't think I heard the petitioner or applicant here. I heard the planning staff, and to the extent that I could do so, if the applicant is going to come up and address this body as I think he should, I would reserve the rest of my time to rebut that on behalf of the folks that oppose this. So I'll leave a little time here for you, but again, at a minimum, take a serious look at this, and it calls for a deferral. We would ask you, on behalf of my clients, we would ask you to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Torno. That was my error. I should have had the applicant come up first before the public, so my apologies. I was in a hurry to get Mrs. Stever up in front of the microphone quickly. So go ahead.
Hi, Kelly Nielsen, Nielsen Construction. Hearing a couple of comments, we just worked directly with the staff on the application process. Regarding some of the legalities of that, if there's something done inaccurately, that's from guidance with working with the staff. I don't know that was ever intentional, if it was even done wrong. Regarding the concept.
Come forward to the microphone.
Regarding the concept plan, we met with the people out there, I think on November 18th, as they said, had give or take 25 people. We sent out the 300-foot radius to all the residents, invited them to that meeting. We heard their concerns. With the large crowd here, there's obviously some people that are very against the idea. We try to calm them down just to try to hone in on what the heart of the challenges were so that we could improve our concept plan and work with the neighborhood. Keep in mind, my company has built probably 100 units or more within this part. I know these people, I've sold them their homes. I didn't want to upset anybody. I was just trying to make the best use of the land. This meeting's about the land use, and I do feel like it fits into the 2016 Shape Sioux Falls Live Work. I think there's multiple locations that or already set a precedent that this is the right type of land use for this space. In working with the people that live in the neighborhood, all the people that are directly attached to the property, like when I, I understand that this is adjacent to it. Most of them we have had contact with and we've appeased. Or keeping the driveways off of Mary Beth, that was a huge concern. So we worked with the city and did the 2 entrances off of 22nd. So I feel like we tried to do as best we could to appease all the concerns. We took our units down to only 80 versus what it could be closer to like 110 based on parking stalls available. If you look at it, our closest building to the residential neighborhood is the closest resident building, being the 2-story apartment building, is 146 feet from the street of Mary Beth. A normal single-family lot's only 120 feet deep. I mean, we're a whole house back with that building, trying to soften the burden to their neighborhood. I do own all the lots to the west of this, directly west. I will be selling them houses. He mentioned that the businesses, there was 2 businesses. They're both tenants of mine that were implied that they weren't notified. They are aware of the project, and they rent from me right across the street in the office buildings and a daycare and a hair salon. I feel like we've done a very good job of trying to appease as many of the concerns as we can, but at the end of the day, it's the perfect use of the land for what it's designed for. It's just Ellis Road, it's a 6-lane road and a collector street on 22nd. And then with not having any driveways or anything on Mary Beth, which would be a residential, I'm gonna have landscaping and garages. I feel like it's a very strong use of the property. Up for questions.
Any questions from the commission?
Kelly, you talked about the change in the concept plan a little bit, but this is a zoning request for a change from office zoning into live-work zoning, of course, that you intend to use for apartments. Can you talk about a little bit about the reasoning why there? I know we see a lot of that right now with COVID and the change of people wanting to get out of office, but is that what happened, or?
Yeah, the 2 office buildings that I have adjacent to this on 22nd and Ellis, like I said, it's a daycare and a salon. With the price of the real estate, I pretty much had to be their partners to get them 2 businesses started. There's really no value in doing that, because all I'm doing is being an investor into multiple businesses. I have to come up with them and create the business, and there's just not people out there looking for office space right now on anything, with COVID especially. And I don't, if you look at just straight down the property, 26th and Ellis Road, there's a piece of property that's just directly south of this, between 22nd, go down to 26. It sat there for 15 years waiting for somebody to develop it into an office or a commercial space. I mean, for what I have to invest in this land, I can't wait 15 years to move forward with it. And there's no end in sight as far as office space right now. It's very available throughout the community.
Okay, other questions from the commission?
If I could follow up with that, Mr. Chair, the city pointed out a few other projects in town where you do see live-work or high-density apartment complexes transitioning directly into single-family home. There's a lot of other instances where there is some form of buffer, like twin homes or townhomes in between those two. Was that concept ever considered? Is that something that you would consider in the event that this were unsuccessful? Mainly, obviously, looking at the south portion there. Is that a possibility that you could put that into a site plan, or any interest that you have in doing that?
Can you pull up a map? Just my site map? Right there. Yeah. If you look, I'll get right back to your questions. If you look at this plan here, we're looking at the property and over here in the zoning O. But if you come all the way back, I own all the property, and get down here where it says zoning RA2, RD3, I believe it is. Them are single-family lots backing up to a 3-story apartment complex. My single-family backyards of houses that people live there will have to look at the backyards of the 3-story apartment complex. I have taken the courtesy out of the crust of the neighborhoods to put it in 146 feet, and it's only a 2-story building. So I can go back and do that because I'm actually wasting 120 feet. I could put in twin homes along Mary Beth, as you're implying, to soften up that burden. Then I would just need to increase the density to, you know, a bigger building on Ellis Road to try to offset that for the cost of the real estate. So, I mean, it's not that I wouldn't consider it, but I feel like the plan I'm proposing softens up that, because you wouldn't have a whole bunch of driveways coming on Mary Beth. I don't know exactly if that's, can't see it for sure, but if it's saying it's 350 feet, you put in a twin home at 70 feet wide, you could put in, I don't know, 15 driveways onto Mary Beth. I feel like no driveways on Mary Beth is a lot better plan than putting in 15. For what exists? So that would be my answer.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? We heard the city's suggestion that we can put some conditions on this, one of which is maximizing the number of units on this property to 80, which is what your current proposal is, just to make sure that's a limit. Are you okay with that kind of limitation?
Of the condition, yep.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, with the original design showing an office or office zoning in this location, when you were first looking at it, what were you thinking for that? Something similar to the north with the salon and the other type of business, or were you thinking more of at that time?
At the time, I did not have a plan. I'm for the most part a single family developer. I bought the real estate for the single family, but if you look at what I had to pay for it, I have to come up with some way to offset some of the expense of the real estate. And that's why we left that as a possibility. I'll be completely honest, I was to understanding that it was easier to come out of office and go to multifamily when I did it. If I'd have known, I would have requested live work day one, but that's kind of changed a little bit in the last 2-3 years, and I'm just kind of caught in the middle of this one, is how I feel, completely honest.
Okay. Any follow-on questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, thank you. I don't know, Mr. Torno, do you want to come up first, or you want some of the other folks to go before you? They can go before me. Okay, then we'll use your remainder of time after that.
I will go next. My name is Brandon Oatkin. I live on 1613 South Mary Beth Avenue, about a block away from where the original proposed entrance was to this. 108 unit is what they sent out to us, 108.
Come forward just a little bit, hard to hear. Yep.
Okay. What they sent to us was 108 units. Now it is down to 80. I have the petitions right here with 90 signatures and the 30 comments that are within this. I'd recommend that you take a deep look at this, okay? Because this involves everybody in the neighborhood. There's all the issues from crime, which the salon that was not notified, nor was the daycare, which has 200 patrons and a year wait to get into it, because we applied. They use our city infrastructure. They use our streets. They use our sidewalks. And I told you yesterday about how we feel about this as a community and when you cross the line of children's safety, okay? And that's what's been crossed here. We're the working class. We can take a hit, okay? It's his tax benefits. He can work the deal on both sides and make the dollars he wants, because he's entitled to do that. He's entitled to do business, but this is not fair and honest. These are working class people out here, and the entire community is on our side. There's not one person in the community that I have found, and I've knocked on over 50 doors, that is in favor of this, okay? Some of the issues we've listed in this and that we will hand out to you, because we did not have sufficient time. I told you yesterday that we had 3 days and change from the new plan to give you our evidence of why this is bad, evidence on water issues, evidence on crime issues, evidence on damage issues, on infrastructure issues, on traffic issues, on children's safety issues, and what that means, what that it really, really means. So right now, you're going to get emotional testimony from people, but we're not going to be able to substantiate that with what we really need to hand out to you, and so that you can make the best possible decision for the community. Because this stands to seek for hundreds of years at the face of a community. And I can tell you that he was not calm at that meeting. He deferred a lot of questions over to Albert. Okay, if you want to ask some people in the community about how he was and how his demeanor was, I'd really love that you would do that. I talked to him yesterday on the street, and he walked away from that conversation. He did not answer my questions because it does not benefit him. I asked him for a deferral on behalf of the community. He said, no way. That's what he told us, okay? He doesn't care about our issues. He cares about his tax dollars, and he cares about his investors. He cares about himself in this scenario, and this is an entire community that you have to take regards into, okay? You have to look at this in a whole scope, and you have to understand that there's an entire community that is at stake here, okay? This is an entirely single-family community, every dwelling within it. There are 3 entrance points to the community, and if you go drive through there and you take a look at that lot on that 5A, or whatever that number was on that description of the land, you go take a look at that land and you can see that it was wetland. You go stand in there and you can see if you can see over the curb. He dumped all that water out of there. I don't know if he got a permit to do that and run it across the street on these guys' sidewalk, all the iron and all the dirt and everything. Well, I don't know what the drain tile is in that situation north of there, but there's $7 million worth of real estate between him and a drainage pond, between his real estate and a drainage pond, okay? $7 million worth of real estate and 200 children that go to this daycare, along with the 7 out of my 8 neighbors who have small children where they're going to be racing down the streets and all the issues that have been brought up in this petition. You need to take a strong look at this. We would seek to give you a deferral so you can give a better scope of what this really seeks to do, okay? There are 500 units going in further on down, a half mile down. There is not a need for this in this area. This is a single family community. And that is all it is. He brought up another apartment that was zoned differently, and that had its own curb and gutter. There was no way to access that. Now they've broken down the curb and gutter in a cul-de-sac at the end of our street. If you go drive through this community, you will see. And you'll see what he's seeking to do. He wants to put this at the face of the community. I told him he could put a gigantic rock out there and name the community. Instead, he said, no, I got the perfect land. I know what I'm doing. He's going to make money and residual money just by waking up tomorrow. But he does not need to leverage us and treat us this way. Okay, we don't deserve this. The community doesn't deserve this, and the city doesn't deserve this. He can do this elsewhere. He's got other developments, and he's got other plans, and he's just going to keep working. But this will be at the face of our community for hundreds of years to come, and affecting people not just next year or the year after and the economical issues, but it'll be affecting them in many, many, many ways. And those are the ways that we need to bring proof to you, and that's why we're asking for a deferral tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item?
My name is Scott Cahoon. I live at 1601 South Ellis Road. I just want to make a few comments. First of all, 26th and Ellis Road hasn't been developed for 15 years because with no shoulder. If you got off that road, you were going to roll your car. I've seen it. I lived out there since 2000. Since it's a 4-lane now, I don't know where the 6-lane comes in, but since it's a 4-lane now, Boulevard, one direction each 2-lane, development will happen. We all know that. Putting this apartment building here, we all know the COVID thing is going on now, so you can say it's home business. But in 10 years, this COVID thing is going to be a memory, and that's going to be an apartment complex. That ain't going to be a live-at-home work thing. It's going to be an apartment complex. So all these people, me, I live on the Ellis Road, so I've been there when it was cornfields. I could see the Memorial Middle School and nothing else. So I've seen development, and I accept it. I'm a realist. I know what's going to happen. But putting 110 units on 3.9 or 4.1 or whatever, I bet you there's not 110 families within 500 radius. So you're gonna dump a ton of people in a small amount of area. It's just too much. And I called his office and I suggested, this is just my opinion, if at 69th, 69th and Oxbow, there's like, I think it's a Lloyd property, they have businesses on the first floor. So if you could have businesses on the first floor, move that building back even further from Ellis Road and have parking for the business on the frontage of the Ellis Road, and then maybe put an apartment building in the back. But you would cut the daytime parking for businesses, and then as the residents come home, then the nighttime parking. I also suggested that he put underground parking under the buildings. That would alleviate even more parking situation, you know, but it's his money, he's a developer, he's gonna develop this land, I accept that. But what he laid on people was 110 units, and like, I think I got a letter on Wednesday or maybe Friday and was supposed to be there on like a Tuesday night. I mean, it was like a shock, and I'm sure people that were told when they bought from the guy that it wasn't gonna happen that way, they're even madder than I am, you know. I am not necessarily mad, but I can see problems down the road. Too many people in too small of an area. And like I said, that was just a country road just a couple years ago. And it's gonna develop, and you guys know that. That's why you spent, what, 10 million to develop the Ellis Road.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the commission?
Just on the petition, can I hand this in for what we have for signatures and the comments? This is as a latest update on before the meeting.
Hand it to the city and they can hand it out to us. Thank you. Is there anyone else, any of the commissioners want to ask questions of the last witness? Okay, seeing none. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item? Come forward, state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Jeanette. I live at 1501, Jeanette Sine. I live at 1501 South Ellis Road, and these are my new neighbors. So I have a little different version of this plan, and I don't really know how this works. Is it over here you put it? This is my neighborhood. I've been here 25 years before there was even a neighborhood at all. So we do understand that it's progressive and that it will be developed. The thing that we're not seeing on this is the intersection at 22nd and Ellis Road. Since it has been developed and we love the new road and all of the sidewalks, there's a lot of people that use those. We need to make a U-turn, I do, every time I come home from work on that intersection. So that's both directions, plus all the other turns, plus all the turns going in and out of the daycare. So the thing is, 22nd Street, the school district worked to keep that street open going through to Ellis Road because they wanted to relieve some of the and Memorial Middle School. So they knew that that was going to get all trapped, and so they needed another road to get out. So that's part of the reason why that's even open to the Ellis Road. And so you have all of that school going on, all of the people going to school, and to me it just looks like a really dangerous situation. There's no lights, and it's already getting a little tough on left turns, so it hasn't even been done very long. The neighborhood, as far as the new sidewalks, are fantastic. Actually, it's really brought the neighborhood together, finally. We have a neighborhood, because otherwise, when there wasn't, nobody was out walking around or doing anything, and now there's tons of people both sides of the street, and it's really exciting. I think it's really kind of a neat development there. Part of the issue with this is we were resting a little easier because we thought it was going to be office space, and then because it was residential, then it was rezoned into office, and now it's being rezoned again. So that's been kind of the hard part is, you know, knowing it's developing, you know, that didn't give us too much of a worry, but now it really does. As you can see on the bottom, let's see here. This is my house right here. And this is the building 30 feet away from my property line. And I just don't really know if I'm gonna love having a 3-story building that close to my house. And I know I might not be there forever, but the other problem is we have seen so many different versions of this corner. I don't know if that building is gonna be facing me or beside me. You can kind of see here. So I tried to put everything to scale as much as I could, and that's how big those buildings are. I'm just south of that. We have an acre of land, and that's how big those buildings are. So there is nothing else that tall in that area. We do have plenty of options for apartments and twin homes and everything else in the neighborhood. And you know, we were fine with office, but this is massive. It reminds me of college dormitories. It's really what it reminds me of. They're huge. And then on this page, it shows, and I guess I can turn it this way now. This is basically a front view of that building compared to my house. My house is on the left-hand side. And so that shows you how just a big massive block this is. And I think that's partly why we're opposed to it, is it doesn't seem to really ease in too well to us. It's kind of more of a towering massive building that's looming over everything else. So let's see. When you travel north on Ellis Road, there's a little ridge as you go up to that intersection. So when we're in our driveway, we can't even see the traffic coming because there's a ridge going up north when you go north. So you don't really know who's coming until you're at that intersection. So that to me is a little bit dangerous too. Otherwise, I really don't want 80 pairs of eyes watching me 24/7. But I do think it's actually just kind of an ugly building and a bad place to put it. So I don't think it's safe for school kids. We have tons of kids going back and forth to those schools. And I think it's just gonna be an eyesore. And as far as noise and being safe, all these people can walk to the bar of a couple blocks away on 26 and Ellis, and you know, it's just, to me, not a good situation.
Okay,
so,
thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this item?
Hello, I'm Camden Crevier. I live at 1616 South Mary Beth Avenue. I know he said that they sent out letters that were within 300 feet. I'm only 5 houses south of this, and I was completely unaware. I know that I'm blindsided by what was going on here. Just 2 years ago, we moved in and the road didn't even go through. So the gentleman that spoke first showed about 4 examples of this situation that's happened in Sioux Falls, but not in one of those situations was there a daycare directly across the street where you could, you know, almost touch. That would be something to really consider. So that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. You have 1 minute.
Thank you. Again, Arshawn Torno on behalf of a large group of concerned neighbors. I think some of the individual comments have been very good. One of the ones I wanted to tie in with, I guess it goes back to, again, my city attorney days, and really, I think this calls for the planning department too to step up and provide leadership, and not just rubber stamp things. Under Ordinance 160.652, Section A, it's a long-established ordinance provision, but there has to be a showing. You folks must be shown the requesting zoning change is justified by a change in conditions since the previous zoning classification was established or by an error in the zoning map. There is an error in the zoning map. And when I hear this COVID issue, it is quite concerning. And I think the gentleman was absolutely on point that 10 years from now, it's going to be a distant memory. Spanish flu didn't last forever. And we have a vaccine we're on the precipice of. So in that snapshot, that doesn't satisfy a change in zoning conditions. And I think it's important for this commission to remember that the developer told you he didn't have a plan originally in 2018 or 2019. So it isn't like, oh, a change in conditions caused me to change my plans. He didn't have a plan. So again, at a minimum, needs a deferral. You've heard that. I think we've made that point, and we have significant concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this item?
Hello, Pat Ursink, 8708 West 22nd Street. A couple of points I got here. You've heard from some passionate people in our neighborhood, and there's 95 more or so on that petition. We all moved into this neighborhood thinking it was a single that way. We came to the Planning Commission last year, and he proposed that it was going to be an office building with the row of townhomes in the backside. We accepted that. Now he wants to change it. Well, right now, after he rezoned that for the preliminary office building and twin homes, he went and regraded the lots and did the street work and things like that. There's only one sewer line ran over to that side of the road. So in hindsight, he knew this was going to happen all along. Everybody over there feels, deceived, basically lied to. He reassured us it was going to be single-family residence. I'm sure there's probably not a whole lot of people in here that haven't rented. They know what happens in apartment buildings. They know what happens in multifamily dwellings. We've all seen it, the parking issues, the police calls, just all of that. And that's what we wanted to move out here for. We move out at the edge of town, try and get away from all that. And then he proposes this. So it's just kind of a blind side. Nobody really wanted it. Kelly, I don't know if I can ask you a question while I'm talking up here, but what's the deal with the single?
Please address the
but that's just the main thing. We all feel lied to. I mean, it's just one of those things. I get it. COVID changes things, but like everybody else said, COVID's going away, should go away. And he can take a hit. He can wait for a little bit. I'd like to see this just stay the way it is. Don't rezone this for our kids, for the traffic, for parking, for everything. We want our single-family neighborhood, and that's why we built out there. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item?
My name is Isaac Russell. I live at 1404 South Maria. We moved out there with a guy that just spoke. We planned to move together. We were old neighbors and we built together in this neighborhood to get away from noisy 57th Street. Because when we first built out there, it was nice and quiet. Now we got in and we're off of TLS Road, so we're not right on it. And now they want to put this apartment complex in where we were told that that wasn't going to be an issue when we built. Where they're proposing to bring the driveways out runs directly at that daycare that everybody keeps talking about. So I don't think that's a great idea either, to have a bunch of cars going in and out right across the street. Dumping them out onto Mary Beth is not a great idea either. No, all the kids, he's going to sell more houses across the street, he says. What says he can't sell those lots and he doesn't put up another apartment complex right across the street? So that's what a lot of people are concerned about, that if he can't sell the lots now, what's going to happen when he adds this apartment complex? Plus all the traffic. There's plenty of lots back there that are going to bring a lot more traffic into the area as it is without the 80 units on the corner to block it up for everybody coming in and out. So I just want to, there's plenty more lots back there that are single family that are going to bring plenty more traffic into that area. So That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak to this item? Especially if there's new testimony you haven't already heard, would be especially appreciated.
Good evening, Council. My name is Clark Mullencourt. I live at 1405 South Thekla, directly kitty corner from 22nd and Mary Beth. One of my biggest concerns is the traffic into this area on 22nd Street, especially across from the daycare. I get off work at 2:30, 3 o'clock, about the time kids are coming home from school, school buses, and kids getting dropped off, and adding significant amount of traffic into this area. I see a lot of problems already starting. Another issue is water. Where's the snow removal going to go? Drainage. When this land was drained, it was pumped down my street, just from a pump, pumped it right down my side of the street. I thought that was a little odd at the time. Let's see, another one of my concerns. Well, yeah, basically my biggest concern is the entrances on and exits on 22nd Street. So, thank you much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak to this? Only people that haven't already spoken, please. Okay, seeing none, we'll close public testimony. Tradition of our commission is we usually bring up the applicant so you can speak to any of the issues that you heard during the testimony to respond to those if you'd like.
Hear a lot of concerns about the entrances out of 22nd Street across from the daycare. That is proposed to us by the city. They want the entrances exactly where we have them placed. So we're kind of limited. We can't go off Ellis Road because that doesn't fit in the city plan. The residents don't want us on Mary Beth, so we were forced to put the two entrances on 22nd, and the city requested that we put them directly across from the daycare and directly across from the driveway. So them are there for them reasons, not by our choice. We didn't control that. First gentleman that spoke said I walked away from him yesterday. I did walk away from him because he accused me of being corrupt and paying off the city. That is the only reason I walked away from him, just to clear the air on that one. Other than that, we feel like we've tried pretty hard working with, as you heard from staff, safety of the streets and everything we can. If you look at it, the entrance to Ellis Road, there is 200, about not even 400 feet. No cars are gonna go very fast. I love kids, I got plenty of my own. I'm supportive of the daycare. Their speed is not gonna be like flying up and down that road when you're pulling out of the apartment complex to go over to Ellis Road. So it's a land use meeting tonight. I do feel like this is a live-work area that fits in the comprehensive plan. And I just ask that you consider what the point of the meeting is.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, we'll close to the testimony and we'll move to potential motion.
I'll make a motion for approval for discussion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded for approval for discussion purposes. Look for discussion.
Can we bring up Albert?
Sure. Albert, could you come forward? I think there's a question for you.
So Albert, can you tell us, I know they don't want Mary Beth to be used. Ellis, I'm guessing basically based on I think that's a highway, right? That's turned into a highway or gonna be a highway?
It's a limited access arterial road.
Okay, so you can't get access on a major road like that. So they're pretty much limited to 22nd Street. You have to have two exits, right?
I believe by fire code for that many units, you're gonna have to have two accesses if I'm understanding.
And so how, I mean, I'm guessing we're trying to line up those with the driveways just to not have lights going into the people's windows, basically, I'm guessing?
So we reached out to our traffic engineering division and asked them on their preferences and what's going on here. First, we started with the Ellis Road access. They indicated that it's too close to the intersection to have any right in, right out only. They'd have to actually take over the house and like lot and a half south of there before you could actually do a right in, right out based on our existing standards. And then they pointed out that anything too closer than what the existing driveway for the existing office to the north there is too close for the left turning motions to be building up and make it safe. And so they indicated that it would have to be moved back to match those existing ones. And given that, again, they had said that from an engineering standpoint, the Mary Beth Avenue access is preferred, but with the concerns of the neighborhood, they understood and they indicated that matching these up would meet the minimum standards of the traffic engineering side of things.
And then another question, so in the current zoning that's there, what's the height that they can go up to right now?
So in office zoning, 2 stories is the maximum that you can do in that, 35 foot.
35 foot. And what with the proposed live work?
Live work, you can go up to 3 stories on this kind of structure would be about the tallest. You go 35 foot.
Okay. And then what, so in the current use, traffic counts that come from a building that could go there, the maximum size, what kind of traffic count will we add to that road?
Oh, when we do our rough cuts from the traffic modeling side of it, just using that information of a 3-story structure or not, which is a kind of higher rate, I believe with the 80 units, we projected that they would have around 600 trips per day generated. If I remember my exact numbers correctly. Either way, traffic engineering looked at it and didn't have any concerns on it and did indicate that with the 22nd and Ellis Road intersection, there's not currently a light there, but once the traffic increases enough at the intersection, they will put a light at that intersection.
Okay. Do we know what currently in its current zoning, if it were to build a max building, you know, what the traffic count would be there?
It varies significantly based on the use there. So medical office building is much different than a daycare, which is much different than any of those uses in there. So it's, when you look at the traffic code books, and I hope you never have to, it's very specific to the types of use, and they do a bunch of studies nationally to figure out what their daytime peaks are. And so I unfortunately can't answer that based on just the general office zoning side of things.
And then when did they have their neighborhood meeting?
We did that on Wednesday, November 18th at 5 p.m., I believe. And again, neighborhood meetings aren't required by our ordinance. We highly recommend them. And not everybody does them, but this applicant do want to try to make sure that we could figure out what major issues there were, if there was, access, those kind of things. And we could try to work through those items as best as possible, as early as possible in this stage.
Okay, I just wanted, so it's basically been 2 weeks ago that meeting was done.
That the physical meeting was held, yeah. Notice was sent out before that, and our letters were sent out before that as well.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Albert, would you say it was a result of that meeting that the revisions took place from that?
Absolutely, yeah. I was on site there as well, and it was a very emotional, a very back and forth conversation on the concerns on there. And so we heard what they were saying, and we try to, as staff, balance the requests of the applicants with the desires of the neighborhood and try to find, if we can, a middle ground as best as possible. Not always possible, but what we heard mainly was it's too dense, it's too tall, and it's too busy. And so we tried to address those by the too tall, by moving all the tall structures further away from the single family structures so they kind of stair-stepped, if you will. Now keep in mind, single family dwellings can be 2 stories. And so you're looking at 2-story potential for a house because any house could be demolished for reconstruction, tornado, whatever. the big shift, but this way it helps match the 2-story next to the 2 stories and then put 3-story next to the high velocity arterial of Ellis Road. And then with the accesses, that's where the Mary Beth came off. Ideally, in this aspect of things, when you have this many people around there, separating your accesses out is a better plan. But again, to help accommodate and not push people into the neighborhood, we felt like getting them both on 22nd Street, a vast majority of people are gonna go to 22nd Street. They're gonna look at which options they have to go. They're gonna go right to Ellis Road from there. So the likelihood that they travel through the neighborhood will be significantly decreased versus the Mary Beth access.
Very good. And just to clarify on the office versus live work, did I hear it correctly that 3-story and 35-foot max for live work, 2-story and 35-foot max for office?
Yeah, basically, I mean, when you look at the general uses, office and live work allow for different types of forms. The most typical one you look at office is a BCF1 form, which is typically a maximum of 2 stories. And then in this instance, specifically what we're looking at here and why we ask for a concept plan, so you know what specifically we're generally looking at, is that MD2 form, which would allow for the 3 stories.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission for city staff?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Albert, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but in a sense, could you talk about the compatibility of the current zoning with the proposed zoning?
Sure.
And the charts you used, just to kind of fill us in.
For us, when we look at this, and let me pull up my staff report here for you, but the lowest compatibility item on here for us with a single family comes down to a 3 on our compatibility chart. So for those who aren't familiar with that, it ranks 1 through 5, 1 being just really not compatible and 5 being it's very compatible. So it's right in the middle side of things there. So based on our ordinance for the shaped places, we have adopted buffer yard standards, which over the years have actually gotten more strict, especially for exact situations like this. And so because it's apartments going next to single family, we have a buffer yard standard. Typically it's a level B buffer yard standard, but since they were proposing 3 stories, recently that was updated to go, we're gonna require level C buffer yard then to give extra precaution and care for those properties around there so they don't feel like they're as directly being spied upon directly. So that additional 10 feet was approved through the plan to provide that buffer. So that's generally where we look at the compatibility side of it. But the other side for us in the shaped places compatibility is what's the best place for these kind of uses, looking at the street network, the growth charts. When you look at our comp plan, you'll significantly notice that we identify employment nodes, intense work areas like heavy industrial or institutional areas, and then kind of everything else is just residential. And what falls in that residential is everything that's residential. So that's single family, twin homes, 4-plex, 8-plex, and then apartments, regardless of size. They all fit in that area. Now, generally, when we look at these, we try to kind of scale that down. So as the further you get into the neighborhood, away from the major streets, we try to get less and less intense. So you try to get more down to the single family to kind of protect those houses so that there's some buffer between the busy road and those structures, or the heavy intense commercial areas or office areas, and then you kind of slow down into twin homes and single family, ideally. And so this, in that instance, fits our definition for how shaped places is looking to buffer these residential areas from busy arterial streets.
Okay. Other questions from the commission for city staff?
Mr. Chair, at the beginning, you talked about some conditions. What were those conditions again?
Sure. So the ones that we threw out there that could be done in here, if you feel that you kind of want to try to help the neighborhood get something more locked in, because again, when we do rezonings, we require the concept plan. And again, when we approve a rezoning, the concept plan is to help give us an idea of what they're thinking, why they're thinking it, but it doesn't lock that in. So with the conditions that we're proposing here, that would kind of help those concerns for those neighborhoods, so they have assurances that we're not just going to say live, work, and then all of a sudden you can go and build 3 stories wherever he wants on the site. So the 3 that we've looked at to try to say the latest one, we think it kind of helps, you know, tier it down, if you will, is that buildings further from 200 feet from Ellis Road have a maximum height of 2 stories, 35 feet. And then number 2, a minimum of a level C buffer yard is required along the south property line. And then 3, a maximum of 80 total residential units on site. So that would kind of lock in that, that side of things. What it doesn't lock in is the number of buildings, things like that, but it does provide that southern buffer, and it does limit the height then on that side of things.
So what you're saying is those conditions limit the development on this site to no more than what's shown, essentially?
No more units than shown, and no more, for the building heights, no more where they're at there.
Right, okay. Other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
By saying yes?
Yes.
All opposed, no.
No.
We have a vote of 4-1. It passes for the amendment. Now we're back to the primary motion with the amended version with these conditions. Any other further discussion?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I would like to understand Commissioner Nyberg's thought on the.
Yeah.
I put the minimum on there as verbiage, but if you have some other thoughts.
Yep, and no, and I think my other thoughts will clarify that a little bit. And I'd like first to thank the public and the neighbors for all coming out to do this evening. I know there's been a lot of frustration about the process. Quite frankly, I think it's pretty remarkable testament to democracy to be able to come forth and be able to state your piece and to be able to give your opinion about something like this. And I remind you that this is just the start of the process. There is a process and a procedure, and it's been tried and true, and it's worked really well in Sioux Falls. It goes from notice, it goes to a meeting with the developer, which isn't always required, but the developer chose to do that in this instance, which I think is great. It comes to the commission, and then it also goes through 2 readings with the City of Sioux Falls City Council. So it's very extensive. I know it seems fast at the time being, but it does take a long time to get through the entire process. I was able to go out to this site this past Saturday. I knew this was a contested issue, and I wanted to spend some time taking a look at your neighborhood and getting used to what the feel of the neighborhood was like, and really getting a vibe for what an apartment complex would look like at this particular site. I think it's important to note we see a lot of issues like this with single-family homes off of major arterial streets. That's a lot of what's happening on the Mary Beth Avenue portion, or at least the homes on the east side there. You go back and you're very close to Ellis Road, a major road, and we see a lot of issues, and that's a struggle when you have a home that is that close to a major arterial street. I think it's also important to note that everybody's different when it comes to whether they prefer an office complex behind them or whether they prefer apartments behind them. We've had similar meetings like this where we've had neighbors who have been very frustrated at going from apartments to an office building. And I think that's important to note. I also, as you move forward with the process and move through to the city council, I think it's important to note that we are here for a reason, and that's because property uses do change. That is essentially the entire purpose of the Planning Commission. I know developers make a lot of promises and things they tell people a lot of time, and it doesn't always work that way. Things change, COVID comes, a lot of other things that require developers to change the use to their property. So I want to stress that this is about zoning, it's about a site use. It's not about the integrity of the developer, whether the developer walked away from somebody once. And I would stress to really keep it to a site-specific zoning issue as you move forward with the process. Having said that, I went out to the area and things did seem particularly tight for a large apartment complex of this size. And my question to the applicant earlier was about townhomes and about twin homes on that southern portion. The property that I worry about the most is 1600 South Mary Beth Avenue. I don't think we had that individual here tonight, but I did go farther south on Mary Beth Avenue, all the way down to 32nd Street. In that area, there is a very large apartment complex off of Ellis Road. Directly to the west of there is twin homes, and then directly to the west of that is single-family home. That is the transition that I like to see in zoning in the city of Sioux Falls. And the city of Sioux Falls has done an unbelievable job, quite frankly, of getting that transitional zoning set up. And I don't see that with this particular application. I know there's a request to defer this item, but I don't believe that there's going to be enough give and change. And even if there were, I worry that it's been too much from the original proposal that was provided to notice, and ultimately to get to this commission. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to vote no on this particular item. I don't think that the size of this project is right, in particular in relation to the single-family zoning at 1600 South Mary Beth Avenue.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the amended motion, please signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed, no.
No.
Motion passes 4-1. Thank you very much.
Item 5B, petition rezone 013381-2020, rezoning from the Recreation District to the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District located at 2100 East Walnut Street.
All right, I'm going to go a little slow on my presentation to allow for the flow in and out. There were some people in the other room for this item waiting to come in, so I just want to kind of go. So again, Albert Schmidt here for you tonight to talk about this item here. This item is located here in the northeast corner of the city quadrant. And this is the Dove Ridge Addition rezone. The applicant here is Wilson Lund Engineering, Eric Wilson, who's present. The owner is the Sundance Group, Jeff Chikotsky. Probably ruined that, I'm sorry, Jeff. The request at this one, and this is part one of a two-part request here like we normally do when we have a new subdivision come through, is we're rezoning. Now this one's unique in the fact that most of it's already zoned correctly for their desired use. There is a small portion on the east side, as you can see here, that is zoned rec currently. So we have requested, based on the scope of the development and how the houses could possibly sit on there, to have that rezoned at this time. First of all, to give public notice, to have the discussion, and second of all, to get it corrected before anything goes on there. So currently, the site is not developed. It hasn't been developed. This is a neighborhood that is one of our older neighborhoods, and so it's kind of been sitting there for a while. You'll notice the street to the south, Walnut Street, is currently minimally improved. And so that is part of the issues on overall with the site. But through working with the subdivision plan, we're working to address all these items. And this is a pictures kind of showing the general area. You can again see on the bottom left-hand corner the street kind of conditions there, right directly in front of the site. And then looking to the right, you can see it's basically a giant open area. There's floodplain on the location, mainly on the back half of that area. And again, through the next portion there, we can get more description for you, but they have scaled back their development desires to not build in the floodplain, and then to work through our city process to develop Walnut, get sewer in there, and put in the streets at no cost to the residents, joining those properties currently, working with existing residents to the west to vacate that right-of-way you see there on Chicago Avenue, to help get rid of that right-of-way so that they don't have to have a front yard on that side either. So that is my very quick side of this rezoning request for approximately 4.75 acres, where they're looking at building duplexes for a total of 18 units on site. And they're looking to keep, again, all that development outside the floodplain. Because of this, it's an existing residential neighborhood with twin homes in there. It's, from a comp plan perspective, it's pretty compatible to the existing neighborhood. Most of the houses out there are single family in the area. There's twin homes. So there's not a significant change in compatibility when that looks at that side of things. So because it meets the and then we can talk get more detail about the site specifics for the actual plan of the development. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here this?
Good evening, Eric Willardson, Lund Engineering, 902 South Cleveland Avenue. As Albert indicated, we're here to, what in my opinion is to correct an anomaly that happened, in my estimation, during the Shea Places, that left a strip of recreation conservation, which no platting fees apply to, and just to get that back into the RD1, which the rest of the development is. So this is kind of a technicality. I think this first part of it, I think most of the discussion is going to come with the preliminary subdivision plans that are the next item on the agenda. I guess with that, I would answer any questions you have concerning the rezone of that strip of rec to RD1.
Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item?
Okay, you have to bear with me. I'm not used to speaking in front of an audience. My name is Kim Easter. Years ago. I own Archery Outfitters, all the property to the east side of the development. A lot of issues I'm kind of concerned about is the plans we've seen at the neighborhood meeting. He says there's going to be no building in the floodplain. Half of that property is all in the floodplain. The south end is wetlands. One of my concerns was water runoff from the development. I was told there'd be a detention pond put in. One of the questions I have is why it's in the northeast part of the property next to my property where the wetlands is. Some of the confusion is how a lot of zoning was changed, I think, within the last 5 years. I have 4 parcels on 35 acres. My 2 south parcels were changed from industrial to rec. And I think that's when Oberg's property was changed. My understanding was Arnie Oberg always told me his property was zoned ag with homesteaded for 1 housing on that property. I'm not for or against this project. I just want to make sure everything is done properly. One of the issues I have is test borings on the property. I had to do this. It's an expense. I'm lucky I did it because there's a lot of rubble in the ground. It was a city landfill. The engineer, I asked this question at the meeting, and they told me it was virgin soil. That's not true. I could tell you I had my project, Archery Outfitters, there for 50 years, and you could believe me if you didn't do your research. A lot of this, I can prove that there's a lot of rubble in this soil. The Monday night Zoom meeting, it was brought up about contamination. Find my notes. As far as I can tell, the public was told that the soil was tested. The only people that I know that did any testing on the property was archaeologists from Augie. 3 gentlemen, 2 with shovels, 1 with a sift box. Okay, that doesn't tell you what's under the ground. Not only with our project, where I initially was going to build the original river channel run up through a lot of this property, okay? I had 35 feet of fill before I hit topsoil. I'm glad we did the test borings. What they're telling me, there's no need to do test borings on this property because it's all virgin soil. I'm just trying to protect the people. If anything's done on the bottom half, it's not going to work out. I mean, I had to do test borings where our building is up on the top side, even though it was a gravel hillside. We had to do test borings there too, on all the property where I wanted to build. So I think that's something that probably should be done. Not only did I have to do it, a sewer project went through our property 2 years ago. Okay, the city had to do test borings to see what was in the ground before they started digging with the sewer project. I don't understand why I had to do it, the city has to do it, and then I'm told this is virgin soil. I don't think anybody knows. Unless you're 80, 90 years old and real familiar with the property, what's there. Some of it is, I'm somewhat familiar with development. A lot of this, I just don't quite see how we're gonna get, or how the developer's gonna get that many twin homes in there just on the top half. And then the street through the center, you have a right-of-way on the west side, the east side you don't. I gets a lot more questions, but I'm running out of time apparently, so
Okay,
just go from there.
thank you for your input. Appreciate that. Any questions for him? Seeing none, is there anyone else that would like to speak to this? We will have a second portion of this particular item that's not related specifically to that zoning change. It's more of the preliminary development plan, which may be a better appropriate time for some of you. I don't know what your comments are. Anyone else want to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public input on item 5B, and I'd entertain commission action.
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve item 5B. Any discussion?
Seems like a good cleanup exercise here for this piece.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Item 5C, petition subdivision plan 013201, 2020 preliminary subdivision plan for Dove Ridge Addition located at 2100 East Walnut Street.
All right, same owner, same application, same location, same size. With this location, going into some more technical aspects of it, some great conversations and questions being raised overall. So when we look at this, it's my understanding when we're looking at this side of things that right away to the west, the Chicago Avenue has a vacation petition in place already submitted to the city to be taken out, from my understanding. And so this is looking to that phase 1, phase 2 area here where it shows the cul-de-sac being put in off of Walnut Street there. And so with an approval of a preliminary subdivision plan, just note that it's not the final, tweaks on every little detail in that side of it. It's the general concepts of where things are generally going to connect into. With this adding one street onto another street, there still is the potential for that circle to meander a little bit here and there. It's not exactly locked into that exact location with approval of this, but it is locked in where you have one access onto Walnut, opposed to all of a sudden now bringing a second street or something like that in there. So that's an important aspect to note on this side. So when you look at this side of things, again, it's 4.75 acres. This does a really good job of showing you where the floodplain is. So in that bottom right-hand one, you can see lots 5 and lower, and lots 8 and higher. Those ones are completely outside the regulated floodplain that currently exists today. While lots 6 and 7, majority of them are contained within the floodplain. We have restrictions to what kind of development can occur in the floodplain. We don't explicitly outlaw and not allow residential construction in there, but we do have much stricter standards to try to safeguard those residences in that area, and we also recommend that you just don't. We are, just as a side note to this one, by the time this will become effective, likely we may have a new updated floodplain ordinance, which would make building in this area extremely difficult. So we're looking to add in additional protections above and beyond federal and state minimums to help protect people up and downstream on these floodplain issues. So just side note there, that's kind of coming through there. So when you talk about this site, we're looking at things like drainage, street layouts, those kind of things. So when you look at drainage, there is a significant drainage channel along the west property line. You go out there, I mean, it is significant. You can see it out there. So when you talk to our drainage team about when you do a development out in this area, they will tell you that anything that's existing today, so that existing kind of drainage flow from the neighborhood going to the north there into the river along that west property line, if there's any work that's going to be done on that side, you need to mitigate the existing drainage as well. If you're leaving it, it is what it is, and it doesn't have to be changed. But with improvements to Walnut Street and things like that, some changes are likely going to have to occur, and hopefully with the design aspects of things, we can make improvements so that things aren't being held up. Like right now, there's a lot of rubble there on Walnut Street where that drainage area dumps into, and it's kind of holding back some water, and that road's kind of soppy. But again, it's not a fully developed road at this point, so hopefully with these changes and improvements, those kind of things can help out. Now, at the same time, the goal of making improvements isn't to make water go quicker out of the way and get to somebody else's problem. So when you look at this, also drainage will do a full review when it comes time to the actual development engineering plans, the DEPs, which is the next step to determine how big and where a drainage facility should and needs to be located to make sure that they meet our minimum standards, which I believe is 80% of agriculture runoff rates. So it's still pretty high. That was increased actually in the last 2 years from what it was before that. So with that in mind, they took multiple steps at this. They looked at different options on this one. This has gone a long way. And hopefully it's helped to alleviate some neighbors' concerns and hopefully reduce it down by staying out of the floodplain. I think definitely helps out. One of the other issues was how are you going to get water and sewer in here? The plan now shows a water and sewer main coming south and then going onto Walnut. This will make or take significant work in Walnut to improve the utilities in this area to make this work. Currently today, the sewer main on this section of Walnut is pretty minimal. I think 18 inches to 22 inches, somewhere in that area. So not deep enough to build a house next to. So this improve the depth of that and should hopefully help out the longevity of those kind of sewers and things like that as well. But what they're proposing will go through right away, the proposed new right of way and the existing right of way. And so they won't be looking at adding any new easements or anything like that along adjoining properties. So that's positive in our aspect as well, just kind of keeping it within the right of way and those kind of things. This is the pictures again of the same site on that side of things. Because of all the work that they've done in there, they've pushed everything out of the floodplain for any proposed buildings they're going to have. And we've also, I will say, harassed them because that's kind of the level that we do with floodplain. We've harassed them on if they're going to build within 100 feet of these even, we're going to have restrictions on you. You can't put basements, things like that. I mean, they have to meet certain standards. So with all that, they've still been upbeat and happy to talk to me about stuff. So I feel like when you look at the development side of things, at least from that aspect of meeting our minimum standards, which are higher than the most area minimum standards, those will be obtained and done. The final details of this side will come through the DEP stage, but this is a great opportunity today and through the city council process to make sure we hear other additional public input. As noted in the previous one, there have been 2 open houses that have been held on this specific one. We did one, I apologize, I don't have the dates in front of me exactly, a few months ago on site when it was way more conceptual, and that did a great job of trying to identify the main issues in the neighborhood and get the contacts going on that side of it. Then through the next month and a half or so, they worked on reevaluating the site, seeing what works, if it can be a little too cold to do that. You can trust me because the previous one where we did a Zoom one on that last one, and a lot of questions were brought up. Very good questions. I thought the dialogue went very well. There were about 17 people on with that one, and I felt like the developer had answers for almost every one of the questions that came up in that side of things. And so in addition, following that one, we asked some additional questions staff-wise, and one of the things that came up was if you look at rubble on site and you find something like that, then we've talked to HUD and asked them what's that process kind of look like, and it's case-by-case basis typically. So if they hit something that looks like rubble, we got to basically stop, take a look at, and assess what needs to happen. Going up to this point, I've been told and informed from our housing division that we have done our required stuff from HUD, which includes some soil samples and borings and stuff like that. And so it cleared all that side of it. Now, just because it cleared that side of it doesn't mean there's something out there. It definitely could be something out there, but from what we've done to meet the federal guidelines, to go through the process that they're going through to utilize funds to help keep this development affordable and help with the street in at no cost to any of the existing. So with that long explanation out there, staff is recommending approval of this based on it meets the comprehensive plan, it meets the design standards, and we believe it meets the intent generally of the neighborhood and the zoning. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair. So Albert, there's two plans here that show arrows. Are those arrows just showing where the watershed's going to go?
Yeah, so like this one here just shows where that water is generally going to roll off to after they're done.
That's all I got.
Okay. Other questions from the commission? Okay, hearing none, thank you. Is the applicant here for this one?
Evening, Eric Willardson again, same address, same company. I maybe failed to mention Jeff Schatkowski, the developer, is also here tonight. He's been at both of the meetings with the public. We've done extensive meetings with city staff for the project. The preliminary subdivision plans have been submitted through engineering, completely vetted through them for drainage, sewer, water, land, you know, the lot layout, the cul-de-sac, and as Albert indicated, this would include, as he showed you in the pictures, Walnut is not completed from Chicago to St. Paul. This project will include street and utility improvements, working with city staff, and again, at no cost to the city, and the city's going to redo the sewer to provide sewer for the development and the neighbors. As Albert said, it's very shallow on Walnut right now, but this would include all the street and utility improvements completed on Walnut on both sides of the street at no cost to the owners on that south side. Again, we understand the drainage issues. We understand the floodplain issues. There is floodplain on the north end. This property drops off severely down to the river to the north. And as you can see on our plan, we plan to stay out of that. The two lots that are part of that floodplain, there is buildable area up above, and flood requirements and city ordinance would require that we build at least 2 feet above that. And we understand that and are not proposing to go further to the north. If you look at our drainage plan in here, it does indicate a future detention pond for the project to take care of the stormwater runoff from this development. And we understand the need to take care of the drainage on Walnut and do whatever improvements engineering staff requires for the drainage way along the west side of the property. With that, I guess I'd answer any questions pertaining to the engineering side of things. Jeff certainly is available as well to answer any questions you have about what his plans are. They're all, as Albert said, twin home type lots, single family, owner occupied. And as staff report said, they said this is very compatible. It meets comprehensive plan requirements and is compatible with the residential subdivision. I guess with that, I know it's been a long night already. Any questions you have, be happy to answer.
Any questions from the commission?
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone in the audience would like to speak to this one?
Matt Misplatz, live at 1806 North Lewis Avenue. Got some concerns with a little bit of the, about the drainage still. If you could pull up the topographical map that's on there, where Chicago Avenue doesn't go through, and you've got your arrows there pointing up what would be the easement there. You can see there where the lines get packed really close together, that's all runoff that goes through there. And all the drainage that comes down Chicago Avenue, East Walnut, and Lewis kind of drains right through that general area right now. And we're really concerned. Curb and gutter down Walnut there on the north side, that you would block that. That entire part, beginning part of the neighborhood drains through there. And, putting curb and gutter when you put the new street in there would stop that. And that water would have to go somewhere, going down Oberg Circle or something else. And I'm quite sure you wouldn't want, the entirety of the neighborhood draining down that one thing. Second concern with this is I know you've approved that this meets your minimum housing standards, but there are no twin homes anywhere close in this part of this neighborhood, and we're putting 9 lots of twin homes in a 1-block area, potentially putting 18 families in a 1-block spot. The rest of the homes around there are single-family homes with relatively large yards. It just doesn't seem like a good fit to me. Those of us that live, adjacent to that, we're the place that has a swimming pool up there, you can see. Privacy for us is an issue. We've been used to absolutely nobody back there. It's been wonderful for 20-some years now. And that's gonna, go to the wayside, but that's progress and all. But this big drainage thing through there is something I think that needs a little closer look taken at. And where that makes that ditch down in there, when Mr. Oberg took the old farmstead out of there, I know for sure because I watched him do it, is he buried the majority of the rubble that came out of that along what would be that drainage path through there. And you can just stand back in the back of my yard piling out of the ground on that side. Heck, there's no telephone pole back there that I can see for sure. So a little bit more investigation into that is certainly warranted. Okay?
Okay.
Other than that, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for the witness? No? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to this item?
Kim Meester again. Just simple questions, the buffer, I don't understand what that is. The yellow line around.
I believe that's the perimeter of notification in general.
Okay, understandable, gotcha. And then the 18 years ago with our project, my initial plans were coming into my property at St. Paul and Walnut, and I was told couldn't do that. Neighborhood didn't want the traffic. Understandable, it turned out for the best for us going where we were. With the exception, it cost me $35,000 to upgrade a city street. On the Oberg Circle in the center, that I think one of the plans I seen was 60 foot wide. I thought my understanding of a city street was 66 feet wide. So Oberg Circle, question I have, is that a private street? No parking on the street? Who's gonna do the maintenance and the snow removal and all that on that street, if it's private or if it's public and the city takes care of that?
Yeah, I think the city can answer those questions. That's a little outside of our purview, although I see in the plan it looks like a 60-foot right-of-way that's currently shown for that street.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the witness? No? Anyone else that would like to speak to this item? Name and address for the record, please.
Kenneth Underberg, 1900 North Lewis Avenue. I actually live in the house just beside the one with the pool, just north of them. Is going into that area with the twin homes and saying 18 families. You talk 18 families, I'm worried about the crime, the traffic. This whole neighborhood has, I think, maybe 5 or 6 exits to get out of our neighborhood altogether. And that includes the school area. I mean, it's not very much to get out. So, I mean, if you had 18 families, that's what, 36 cars most likely, pulling in and out of our neighborhood. And if you see, it's kind of a dead end in that area over there. So you're gonna have everyone jumping down Walnut and Mulberry, just kind of all loading onto Jessica, because that's your first exit. That's just, and because Jessica there, if you go south, that's one of the first exits that comes out, and it goes towards the Casey's gas station on Rice Street. So I'm just worried about all the traffic, all the deals. You got the splash park that's just east, or right at Jessica right there too. So you're overloaded when summer hits and you get the park there. Now you got 36 more cars coming through. It's just gonna cause a massive traffic jam. We need to look something with, I'm just worried with kids and family. I like my kids playing in my yard, and I don't want people going through my yard to walk to the park or something, because I kind of like my privacy. And as my neighbor also said, they like their privacy. I mean, they have a pool and they like to have fun. But it's just, and we've done a slip and slide, me and my neighbor, down our backyard, and I don't want to have some random people just, I mean, if they're neighbor deal, but I don't want to have all suddenly 20 different people bugging me. I got the house because I love the land. And I'm between worrying about my family and the increase, what the crime increase and everything like that would be, that's one of my biggest concerns with that. And with the sewer on that one, I know they showed the deal with the sewer flow. Issues, last year I think it was, or maybe 2 years ago, Jessica, where they were already trying to pressure washer out or blow out Jessica's sewer line because we were having issues with strain on just Lewis Avenue itself. So if they're teeing off and gonna put it all onto Lewis, is that whole thing gonna be redone? I'm just kind of curious on what the whole plan, or if it's gonna be able to handle it, or I'm gonna have something coming back up at my house if I, so. And then also when they're doing the lots and stuff like that, if they're adding any dirt, I'm kind of worried about some of the other neighbors. They're a lower house that's near the flood zone. They've never been flooded that I know of, but with that big last rain, it got close to them. I mean, even when if they add any more backfill to that area, I'm worried that that might change where that flow of the water actually out in the farmer's field that comes in from the river, because when that river overflows like it did this a couple years ago, that actually turned that I had water like 3-4 foot up on my property, and that's up. My lot is the one kind of right, let's see, it'd be west of lot 5 and 6, that line. Nope, down one. I actually had that whole corner about 5-6 foot in, was about a foot of water. And I mean, that all the way up to lot 4 was nearly a water mesh, or like swamp water with that time. So I'm just between with them adding dirt, or if they're going to be adding dirt to reinforce the ground, how much is that gonna change the land for the back, all that type of stuff. So I'm really kind of, just precautions of doing, we're gonna get stuff done there. It's always gonna develop, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this item?
Hi, my name is Sherry Merkins, and I live at 1912 North Lewis. My house is the last house on Lewis to the north end of the property. As you talked about a prior rainfall, we had water about 20 feet from our back door. I do have a photo. I don't know if you're able to put it under. As you can see, the fence, and there's some ducks swimming back there. That's the property that is in the floodplain. And I'm just afraid that if his two northern lots are changed at all, that is going to change the floodplain where my property has the potential to flood easier. The drainage on Lewis Avenue, we don't have like gutters where the water goes down under the street. It flows straight down the curb into the farmer's lot. Well, when that gets plugged up, I have an ice skating rink if it's cold enough right outside the front of my driveway. So, I mean, there's a lot of drainage issues. Obviously, you know, it rains like that, and I have now more, you know, water coming that way. It changes my safety and also the privacy. You know, I never thought I would look out my back door. I've lived there 20 years. I never thought, hey, I see a nice retention pond, you know. Another thing, if you drive through our neighborhood, there are exactly 2 duplexes out of the whole neighborhood. So 98% are single family homes. On our block, the lots are at least 1 acre in size. He's got 4.7 acres, a third of it's in a floodplain, and he wants to put 18 families on the remaining portion. It doesn't go with the flow of the neighborhood. Our school is already overcrowded and they're busing neighborhood kids to other schools. I mean, I think someone bought some land and had great intentions, but didn't look at the whole picture. And I think when you take time to look at the whole picture, you're gonna agree. It's not good for our neighborhood. Really, that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none. Anyone else want to speak to this item?
Jeff Melo, 2105 East Walnut Street. I'm straight south of Oberg Circle. I've talked to Jeff, the developer. He thought that possibly that street might get moved to the east slightly. I've got, my bedroom's right in front of my house. I really don't want headlights coming up in front of my bedroom, or the cars coming up through my house when they leave there. So I haven't heard anything about that, and I don't know if, I just heard here a little while ago. Is there any cost to it? I can't remember. No? Okay. Thank you. So there's other people down the street now. Is that street going to go all the way through, all the way down between Chicago and Lewis? Yep. Okay. Because it's all gravel. The one thing about the gravel that's nice about it, it sucks up a lot of the rainwater. You're taking drainage, which this doesn't even show it. You're taking drainage almost all the way to Rice Street. From Rice Street going north, and I know at least from Jessica, all the way over to St. Paul. The whole area is draining right there where you're looking at those things there, where Chicago should go through. That whole area drains there. I've seen it down there. I got a 4-wheel drive truck. It sits up high, fairly high. And I've seen it down there where I can't open my door. The water's that deep in that intersection down there. And that was before that riprap rock was put in there. That's when it drained good. And the whole area drains in there. And doing that, but that's not the developer's problem, I don't believe. That's just where it goes down that street, but it needs to be addressed and looked at. Once we put that blacktop in there and all the way around that whole area, I'm kind of worried about that water's really going to be gaining speed and going to come down way faster because it's been slowed down by the gravel, and a little bit runs off the grass here and a little bit off here and stuff. So, but as far as that Oberg being lined up with my house here, it's we can move it, which there's been some discussion here. It might not be exactly where it's at. So, and there was a little bit too with the amount of area those houses have. I don't know how many square foot they got for land on the houses. Jeff will probably tell me about that later on in the week here, but we do have all the surrounding houses pretty much around there do have a lot of land with them. And it's been kind of nice that way. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, let's have the city come back up. I think we heard enough questions about the process the city goes through. I think would be helpful to just kind of reiterate for the group, just in a general conceptual description of how the city deals with drainage concerns in ongoing engineering, as well as floodplain modifications and sewer capacities.
Sure. Yeah, good questions. So yeah, just as a reminder, on our side of things with the preliminary subdivision plans, generally it's that first step when we're looking at this side. So even at this first step, we've had staff from different divisions and departments review it to give comments on it. Comments have been made, and they've kind of given some ideas of what kind of final tweaks need to be worked at. But from this standpoint, they've been met as minimum standards that they need to have to give their approval, so we don't have any for this at this time. So at that point, with this preliminary subdivision plan, if approved tonight or recommended for approval, it'll go to City Council. City Council will do another public hearing on this, which will also coincide with the second reading of the rezone that we previously heard tonight. So they'll be at the same meeting. And then if approved there, then the developer will be able to move forward with DEP plans, development engineering plans, and get those finalized and signed. And then with that process, that's a mainly engineering process where they do an in-depth analysis of exactly the grades, the setting of the sewer, the drainage flows, all that stuff. So they look at that in that much more detail. I wish I could speak to more detail on the exact drainage side because, as you probably have guessed, I'm a very high advocate of floodplain and doing things so that you're not pushing things off other people, because that's not what we should be doing or promoting. But drainage and floodplain are separate things, either fortunate or unfortunate, depends how you look at it. So we have a whole team in our engineering side of it that looks at the drainage side of it. And so I like to try to speak as much as I can to that, but my knowledge in there is a little more limited. So speaking on the floodplain side of things, and with our proposed ordinance coming through here in the near future, we currently are fairly restrictive for what we try to do, and we really don't want anything developing in the floodplain if we don't have to. We do allow it today, and going forward, we want to be even more restrictive on what we do, because like they talked about, I mean, these are perfect examples of the things that we're worried about, is if we're going to put any fill in this area and a flood event does happen, this is the primary area here where flooded waters aren't going to move fast through these backyards. They're not going to just whoosh through and take buildings away. It's going to slowly rise up. It's going to sit there, and then once capacity kind of goes down because the river's finally getting it through the system, then it's going to start to slowly go down again. And so we don't want that capacity area to be pushed off somewhere else so it's somebody else's problem. We want them to go, hey, look, we have a capacity amount here. We need to protect that. So we've done that, looked at that from a larger scale, but just specifically this neighborhood, that's a major concern of mine. When this first came through, I had major concerns on that aspect of it. The developer has been very good to make assurances and work with us. If they do want to do any kind of development in that area, any kind of fill, any kind of new buildings, they're going to have to get harassed by me again. And I don't think they want that. But we will look at that side. If they have requests, there are certain things you can do in those areas, so we'll look at that. But again, our primary focus when we do floodplain reviews is, are you going to impact anybody else? Are you going to damage anybody else? How are you going to affect other properties around you up and downstream, and how can you account for that on your own property, or how can you work with other property owners to account for that so that it's within your control as best as we can model. Now, the problem that comes down to that side, water starts and stops, and so we design to a certain standard. That's the 1% annual chance of flood, and so hopefully we don't need to go above that, but unfortunately that's where our restrictions and authority kind of limits is based off of. So with those kind of sides of it, that's where they're at. Now the sewer aspects of that side of things, again, that comes back to the DEP stage, that next stage. They're really going to take another look at that. They've looked at this initially and they've signed off on this side, so which tells me that they've looked at how that sewer is going to kind of drop off into the adjacent and get out of there. But I can't speak exactly for that because I just don't know. But typically they've been pretty concerned, and they watch and they calculate based on what the size pipe they have and how many households you're adding in there, what the capacity for that is. And typically, from my review working with them, they look at the capacity of a pipe and they try to maximize it, not to 100%. They try to give a little bit of wiggle room so that there's some variation, so that you're not saying, yep, we're going to fill this pipe full all the time, because we know that certain events are going to happen and that's going to fluctuate. So they try to keep some air in there as well to help it rise up, but also help keep it flow through. So that's my technical aspect of sewer, which didn't get very technical, but that's that side of it. So hopefully that answers your questions.
Yep.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Hey, Albert, I'm guessing since the street ends in circle, that it's a private or a public street.
Yeah, so my guess is, based on what we're seeing here, we're looking at a public street. The 60-foot right-of-way aspects of it, I can't speak exactly to. More typically, private streets are more than 60 and public streets are 66. But again, we have had engineering review this, and our traffic engineers, our access engineers are part of that review. And at no point in time have they indicated that this needed to be revised for this specific portion of that side of it. So I have had them in the past and other ones where they say, hey, look, this is zoned accordingly, so you need to give us 80-foot right away. You need to do this. So we have had those comments come up at this point in time. I have not heard that for this one specifically, but.
Say, Albert, somewhat related to that, can you talk about the alignment of Oberg Circle at all? I think this establishes where that's going to be at. Can it move in the future? I actually kind of think it's in a good spot. It looks like it splits the lot lines there on the south side, but is it set in stone once we approve this?
It's not set in stone with the exact location of that with this approval.
Okay.
It definitely can shift over, and we can work on with the developer and to see if this is the most appropriate spot on that. But I mean, again, when you look at this, you're trying to balance out these ones, and then again, ideally for us in planning, we don't like to try to line up driveways with windows so that you're always getting shined in. It's not an ideal situation. So if we can try to avoid that as best as possible, we will. But at the same time, too, you don't want to add in any sort of crazy little zigzag in the side there, as that can cause additional issues for area residents at nighttime driving conditions, things like that, too. So trying to balance those two things can be very difficult sometimes. But I think this gives you a rough idea of hopefully where that's at, and hopefully they can kind of figure out a way to get it more in the backyards and side yards rather. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission? Seeing none, thank you. Entertain commission action.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for approval of this item 5C. Any discussion?
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chair, I think this generally fits the comprehensive plan. It does appear that there may be some drainage issues in this area, but I really think the developer has done a good job of addressing those. I think the improvements to Walnut are probably going to be the most significant improvement to the drainage issues that this could possibly have. So I like that is on this in this development. As far as North Lewis Avenue goes to the neighbors, I'd tell you, you've certainly got the city's ear, and I think they're going to be going forward. So I would keep staying at the city, and it sounds like they've been fairly responsive on some of these items, and I think they've got their eye on some of your concerns. So otherwise, when I look at what we're voting on today, preliminary subdivision plan, I feel like this fits, and I think the developer is going to do it, has done, and will do a good job. So I'll be voting in support of this.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair? Yeah, I would echo Commissioner Nyberg's comments. In addition, for the neighbors' benefit here, the land was already approved for this type of use, this particular plan, with the, well, I guess with the exception of that stripe that we talked about a little bit ago, but it was already set to do this type of a development. And I guess what you heard from planning staff, Albert, when he gave his answers to Larry's questions, Commissioner Lukey's questions, is just the beginning. There's an Albert in building services. They're just getting warmed up. So I mean, this is a development that isn't. It's got some challenges, and they understand that, and they're going to have your guys' back. And this is the end result is going to be improvements to the area that I think are going to be significant for you folks. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Motion carries unanimously.
Item 6 is public input on non-agenda items.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience who would like to give us any input on non-agenda items this evening? Seeing no one moving toward the microphone.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn